welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, Nigerian Air Force says Rann bombing is regrettable, even as the House of Representatives calls for probe into the accidental bombing. The President sets aside the Federal Executive Council meeting, sends delegation to Borno State, also asked military to avoid repeat of Rann bombing. It's another bloodbath in southern Kaduna. 3 people are killed by suspected herdsmen. And Nigeria Air Force departs for the Gambia ahead of tomorrow's presidential inauguration.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's Senate asked the Central Bank of Nigeria to initiate measures to close the wide gap in the currencies market.
And on sports news tonight, Asian Football Confederation suspends champions John Book Motors from 2017 Champions League over match fixing.
And for Babuja, I am Ivy Clem. The Islamic movement of Nigeria demands the release of their leader, El-Zakzaky.
We begin tonight with the update on the Rann bombing in Borno State, as the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, says the action is regrettable. He says the Air Force will set up its own panel to work with the one set up by the theatre commander of Operation Lafia Dole to investigate the circumstances surrounding the bombing.
Our pilots got airborne hoping to save lives, but unfortunately that was a tragic mistake which led to the loss of lives of innocent people. We have been operating in the Northeast for about 8 years now. This is the first time we have flown close to 6,000 hours. This is the first time we are having this tragedy. It's a very tragic and very unfortunate incident. And we have also, about this time, we are putting up a high-powered committee at the Air Force level. I know the theater commander is also working hard to find out what really happened. All that we have, the information we have currently is very sketchy. We don't want to preempt the findings of these committees, both at the Air Force headquarters level and the committee that has been set up by the theater commander to also look at what really happened. It's very tragic, very unfortunate. But I want to assure you that as a professional service, we'll continue to evaluate our processes and procedures so that we can be effective in dealing with those that are out to kill human beings.
Meanwhile, the President today dispatched a delegation of top government officials to Borno State following the Rann bombing, a move that prevented the Federal Executive Council meeting from holding. President Muhammadu Buhari asked the military to ensure that the airstrike which killed at least 50 civilians in Rann, Borno State, does not happen again. The President's message was conveyed by his Chief of Staff, Mr. Abba Kyari, while leading a federal government delegation on a condolence visit to the Borno State government. Owing to the visit of the federal government delegation, that Federal Executive Council meeting could not hold today, as we said. Mr. Kyari said the visit was on the instance of President Buhari, who had condoled with the families of the victims of the airstrike, as well as the Borno State government.
I have already directed the military authority to offer medical assistance to the victims, and similarly, I have also ordered for a detailed investigation with a view of making these ugly incidents not happen again.
Meanwhile, the International Committee of the Red Cross has vowed to continue delivering aid to northeast Nigeria, despite the fact that about 6 of its workers were among those killed in the accidental airstrike that left over 50 people dead and many injured in Rann community. The ICRC adds that it's coordinating medical emergency efforts with the authorities and other aid agencies. In addition, medical charity MSF says it will work with the Nigerian army to ensure such a horrific tragedy does not happen again. MSF says at least 52 people were killed and 120 others wounded. A Nigeria Air Force plane wrongly dropped a bomb in the community, an incident which the military has described as a mistake. President Buhari also pledged the federal government's assistance to the state government in what it calls, quote, a regrettable operational mistake, end of quote. In the meantime, the rights organization Human Rights Watch says the Nigerian government should compensate victims of the accidental bombing. The attack took place near the border with Cameroon, where the military is engaged in what it calls its final push against Boko Haram. Mosi Shegun, a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch in Nigeria, says, quote, prompt, adequate and effective compensation is needed, even though there's no evidence of a willful attack on the camp. She also adds the victims should not be denied redress merely because the government said the bombing was accidental. Well, even as the military has been criticized by the House, the Nigerian Air Force has apologized for the incident and promised to guard against it in the future. Joining me now on the news at 10 to review this incident is a former Air Force pilot and retired Group Captain John Obakbolo. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you very much.
And we do commiserate with all the victims of this incident. But now let's look at what happened in Rann community. They've apologized. That should they still be receiving the backlash for it, right?
Well, in situations like this do happen. The war has shifted from front line to urban. So it's no longer this side and that side. You have a demarcated or a defined front line. It's now an urban warfare. So you depend solely on accurate intelligence. Once you get intelligence back to the operational room, what they do is to plot out the coordinates of where they are to go. Then you are very sure of the information and the intelligence you have gathered. This thing happens all the time, from time. It happens in Syria. The other day, the U.S. aircraft bombing their own, target that they shouldn't have, but it just happened. It's not, they call it accidental because it's not deliberate. You did not take off to go unleash horror or your friendly forces. Regard these people as friendly forces.
Let me just ask you, you're a former pilot. How does it work when you're in the air? How easy is it to make a mistake of this nature?
No, that's what I'm saying. Pilots are briefed in their briefing room. They're given information. Targets are well defined. And then the equipment they're using and the bombs are made to go in line with the targets they are going into. It is not just take off and decide on what you have to do. Everything that has been done on the ground before they take off. That's why you see the Chief of Air Staff said it's regrettable, it is accidental, and that they are going to carry out their own investigation. Of course, you cannot rule out human imperfection. Anything like this, anything can happen. If it was a well-defined enemy targets, then you know that there's a front line. You are giving air coverage to the ground forces, soften the ground in front of them before they move in. But this is not so. I could see this one as a selected target that they were supposed to go before the ground forces move in. Because we've been told Sambisa Forest has been cleared, and which means the headquarters has been completely downgraded. And so these are what you call selected targets. And it depends, like I said, on the information, the intelligence information they got.
Okay, now let me just ask you, and looking at an incident like this, we've obviously been having many reactions, and another one is coming in from the House of Representatives. They've criticized the Rann bombing, and they've also called for a probe. Now let's just listen to what they have to say, calling for that probe. Let's listen in.
It's an incident that Nigerians are still coming to terms with. The reported bombing of a community in Rana, Kalabalge local government area of Borno State. At the House of Representatives, the matter is being considered as a matter of urgent public importance. The sponsor of the motion gives more information on the matter.
That the incident was not a deliberate act of targeting, nor a hostile act on the civilian population, whose lives it had the duty to safeguard and protect.
Lawmakers who contributed to the lengthy debate that followed described the incident as a sad development that must be investigated.
Our heart goes to the people whose relatives have lost their lives. But it's a wake-up call for all of us as Nigerians to begin to look at critical issues when things like this happen.
It's only the investigation of this house that will convince Nigerians that this thing was really an accident. We have to investigate and ascertain that it was actually an accident.
The quality of intelligence gathering within the security agencies and their operations needs to be looked at carefully. It only means that there is problem in their intelligence gathering, analysis, and then the response that has happened.
I would urge that we should not just throw our hands in the air and say it's a mistake. It does happen everywhere. If it does happen, what do we then do to forestall such an occurrence again?
The House, however, resolved to send a 10-man committee to visit the scene and assess the situation on ground. A minute's silence was also observed in honor of those who lost their lives in the incident.
May the souls of the departed rest in perfect peace.
Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
The eyes have it.
Well, let's continue our conversation. Now, you heard them that the quality of intelligence gathering needs to be looked at. How do you respond?
Yeah, that's what I said before. Yeah. You see, at the stage we are now, the war is being fought based on intelligence gathered on the ground. And in a situation like this, in a time like this, emotions run high. And so you don't expect people to just keep quiet or fold their arms. So they want to know what really happened. And that's what I'm saying, that it is based on the quality of intelligence gathered. And that is what that necessitated the mission that the pilot took. So if you are given a wrong coordinates where you don't have enemies are not there, because right now everywhere is the war front.
So let me just ask you quickly, each security expert we speak to talks about the quality of intelligence gathering.
Yes.
What can we do about this quality of intelligence gathering?
That is the thing. The Air Force itself has its own intelligence cell, which should be working with the other government intelligence cells. So our intelligence cells must be very, very accurate in their analysis and submission, because if it is not, the fellow you are putting behind a control to take off and go and execute what you want them to do, you will find out that the enemy, number one, could have shifted, moved from where you thought they were. And then by the time this guy gets there, it's a different ball game. It's not where he should have gone. Maybe where they sighted the terrorists is quite different from where these harmless victims were. So that is why now the Air Force wants to find out. In their investigation, the quality of information gathered will be analyzed and will be seen. So that's the thing. Because no sane pilot will take off and start running like Rambo over defenseless people.
All right, retired Group Captain John Obiakwalo, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the News at 10 tonight.
Thank you.
And in part 2, after the break, Sultan of Sokoto and other leaders push for better security for the nation and they caution against violence. That's in a moment. You join us again.